introvert. I was in between guy. I was a guy out camping and hiking and that snowshoeing and that kind of stuff. So I had itchy feet, you could say. And so I applied for the American Field Service Exchange Program and ended up going to Australia. Man, that changed my life. It gave me the want to travel, and so I
Hmm.
did. I spent a few years kind of kicking around still, went to finish my degree, ended up as a ski bum for a while in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and decided, you know what, I gotta do something. So I joined the Navy. Did really well in my A school. That's the first school you go to in the Navy after boot camp. And I did really well. It was Operations Specialist A school. And I happened to graduate number one out of 90 students because I was older and a little bit wiser, I hope. And I did really well. I applied myself and I got to pick orders. So I chose the USS Vincennes out of San Diego, California. And the reason why I did is, A, I wanted to get back to the West Coast, especially heck, San Diego. And this was the very first Aegis spy ship on the West Coast, radar. So, hey, that's my ticket. So I ended up going there. It was pretty arduous training cycle. Of course, you're the new guy, and you got to earn respect, brother. No other way to do it. Um, and I ended up going on deployment, and damn near ended up getting out July 3rd. And I'll get emotional. It's
It's okay.
hard, because every time I remember this, it's the bookends of my career. You have to understand
Mhm.
this. I was standing this close that I am right now to this computer when Captain Rogers stood up, turned the fire enable key, and we shot down a commercial airliner. Flight 655. And the problem for me was, other than it was unbelievably horrible, is dang it, I knew what it was, and I couldn't say anything because I had been standing that same watch. I was on a non um, functional, I didn't know jack shit about air defense at the time. I was totally unqualified, no authorization to speak. I just had happened to be standing in that spot all summer. And I happened to see the same aircraft launching out of Iran going to Dubai. And I was thinking to myself, screaming, Kevin, that's a comm error. You got to say something. But I didn't. And I was just about to. I knew I was going to get in trouble. I knew it. And all of a sudden, Captain Rogers stands up and says, it's okay if I cuss. He stands up and says, God damn it, they fucking sure they didn't a comm error. Loud as he could in Combat Information Center, CIC. So I said, oh, thank God they know. Because, everyone in front of me in the decision making table, they've been on watch with me all summer. They knew. And I wasn't on comms. I couldn't hear. I was just hearing people chatter on the air side. F-14, F-14. And so I relaxed, thinking, okay, there must be an F-14 behind it or something, or it is one. And if I say something, we might get blown up, just like the USS Stark did a short time before. So I kept my mouth shut. We fired. Found out shortly after it was a commercial airliner. As
Yeah,
far
there's
as I know,
absolutely no easy way.
yeah.
As
See,
much as we are,
brother, it crushed me because one of my best
yeah,
friends in college was Iranian. I used to take karate courses with him, and man, he was a good kid. I loved him. Not afraid to say it.
yep, there's nothing wrong with that. I'll tell you, we talked a little while ago about the things that
Hey, let
war
me finish
can
this
do.
story real quick. Boy,
Go
I
ahead.
still have the composure.
Yeah, go ahead. Go
Uh,
ahead.
I almost got out, and then one night I had an inspiration. In fact, I woke up in a dream. In this poem right here, Captain Rogers in command. This was fully written in my head, and I made a couple typos, and oh, sorry about that. And when I was a message writer, drafter, that was one of my jobs. I had senior people would draft messages, and my job was to route them up the chain of command. The captain would release them or not. So I took my phone up with him. I said, "Hey, Captain, I wrote this for you." He came on the general announcing system and read it to the crew in tears. I have it. I'll post it if you want to see it. And 3 days later, Iran and Iraq signed a peace accord. That was my saving grace. It ended the war. If that had not happened, what would have been said? Question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And even then, I was thinking about it. So I stayed in and I turned it around. I said, you know what? I'm going to make goddamn sure that never happens again. And I became the best. I tried. You bet I did. I made it all the way to E8, senior chief, Top Gun school and everything. 6 deployments, all the Bush wars. I call them the Bush wars. Every one of them, combat action, everything. Um, and I was up for E9 once, and that was kind of on the drawdown, and they only made one that year in the whole Navy. And let me tell you, he was a damn good guy. I never served with him, but I knew who he was, and I actually stood up and cheered, knowing I didn't make it. I was cool, you know. They picked the right guy, and I won't drop his name. I don't have permission, okay? And that's what happened. So that's the one bookend, okay? You got to remember this. And my very last underway in the Navy. At this point, you got to understand, Steve and listeners, I was a very senior trainer. At that point in my career, I was the guy standing behind everyone else, keeping grades. And my job was to submit um, lessons learned and recommendations on what this crew could do to improve right before they went to deployment. It was like a final exercise. We were getting ready to run a air defense. I was still part of the crew, but I had a little bit different role, if you will. I was kind of I was still standing watching stuff, but at the same time, I had to. It was my exercise. I put it together. I briefed it. I trained for it. We are getting ready to launch it. And I had been tracking these objects like you had described earlier about Vietnam. Your father had seen them there. Same type of thing. These things were dropping, and I wasn't really concerned about them when they first started seeing them on or around the 10th of November, 2004. Because number one, we're off the coast, our own coast, and we have all kinds of air defense assets along the coast. If we get trouble, we can say, hey, we need help, right? They're going to come. But we were tracking them. We were reporting them on our data links back to the beach. If anyone wanted to see them, which they did, by the way, didn't know it at the time, they had it. And I wasn't worried about them. I was just thinking, I was going through my head, what the hell could these be? Someone's doing a test of some kind, forgot to tell us, because they're supposed to tell me because this is a controlled airspace. I can't necessarily keep people out of it, but I warn them. It's a warning area. Anyway, I wasn't really concerned. We're reporting them, tracking them, until the morning of the 4th. The air wing had flown on board previously, and we were getting ready to do the air defense right before we're launching. Captain Smith comes down to combat and says, "Hey, sir, we've been watching these objects several days now. I have no idea what the hell they are. Can't find it in documentation. None of it. No one on the ship, the other ships, no one from the beach knows what they are apparently."
so multiple ships were seeing it.
Oh yeah, every ship in the strike group. We had other Spy 1 ships out there all tracking these, and the aircraft carrier on their SPS-48 radar, which is it's a rotational radar instead of phased array.
So we're not just talking about one thing here. We're talking about the whole group is seeing
Absolutely.
these things pop.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
You got to remember, I'm on the air defense commander ship, so it's our job to figure this out. And the captain's looking at me. He's looking for my recommendation. Because my job is to give a recommendation only. I'm not a decision maker. I give a recommendation. This is my recommendation from a tactical point of view what we should do right now
Hmm.
and what we should think about tomorrow and the next day and that kind of stuff. Um, so he comes down to combat and say, "Hey, sir, we call it combat, CIC. You call it what you want. We've been tracking these things for several days. I have no idea what they are. Excuse me. Very strongly recommend we intercept one, get a visual identification on it, and go from there." He looks at me and says, "You're right, Senior Chief. Intercept VID, visual identifier." I was like, "Yes!" I've been wanting to do it for several days, and I could see it on everyone's faces when I went back to the air side in combat. They're like, "Yeah." So Captain Forever launches Fast Eagle Flight 101, just the kind of guy he was. We cancel training. We vector him to the closest object. He gets in the merge plot position, which when I'm looking at a two-dimensional radar display, it's two track symbols because we don't look at raw radar. We look at symbology. So you can walk into a display and instantly recognize the picture, right? Everything has a separate track number. Well, you got these two tracks on the same overlapping on the 2D. Called merge plot. As soon as he got to that merge plot position with his track, it was 20,000 feet or so. That object, whatever it was, I found out the next morning, that went from 20,000 feet. Think about this, to 50 feet above the water, above the ocean in 0.78 seconds. 0.78 seconds.
That's insane.
No
It's I
no
was
sonic
talking.
boom. No sonic boom.
No sonic boom, and I was talking to a PhD about this too that did some calculations for me, and it was something like 5,920 G forces when that encounter happened. And I said, "Can you do that? Can you tell me that again?" He's like 5,920 G forces from 20,000 feet to 50 feet above the water in less than a second. We're talking here, and I'm like, "What would that do?" He says, he was no, he made no bones about it. As a PhD, he goes,
Right. Right.
airframe would just be destroyed. There's
Well, think about
nothing
this
that you
way.
could have.
The force equals mass times acceleration, right? So
Hmm.
just think if that thing actually had mass with the type of acceleration it must have had, right? Traveled that far that fast. Think if it actually had impacted the water with mass, the type of force it would have displaced in the water.
Yeah, the kinetic energy would be
Yeah,
insane.
yeah. It
It
made a
would
pretty,
it would be
pretty big
explosive to the
splash, right?
point of like what do they have those new those kinetic energy
So,
weapons there supposedly
so
that can come from space. There's no nuke, but it comes from
yeah,
space and it drops down. And that's all it needs is the kinetic energy. It
yeah.
doesn't need any explosive, it doesn't need anything. It just
But
needs that
the reason why I bring this
speed.
up, Steve, is because it wasn't my situational awareness at the time, but apparently this object, the one I'm telling you about, actually did go in the water. I didn't know that at the time because that was the subsurface side of the house, and it just wasn't my. Because I'm looking at the air picture, it wasn't my situational awareness that ever went into the water. But think about that. If it had not only this one but other ones with that type of force, and if it had mass, that's why I think these things are massless. Otherwise, it would create a big splash, and they don't.
And there's not one of these, but you
These things
saw
are
what, you
these
100.
things are these. Oh yeah, if you counted them all up between the say the 10th and roughly the 16th of November, they appeared in groups of 5 to 10 at a time. Count up all the groups and all the different objects in the groups, about 100 of these objects. And you want to know something interesting? We were picking them up about 60 miles or so uh, from the point. So we were probably at that time probably 120 miles or so south of Catalina Island, kind of southwest San Diego. These things were flying right through our operation area at between 20 and 28,000 feet, going 100 knots, one at a time too. We'd wait, and then another one would come by. That's real slow at that altitude. There's nothing I know that flies that high and that slow. Um, some kind of
And
odd,
these objects
not
were
groups like that,
well,
not coming from space and stuff. You got to remember that. I mean, sure, a balloon
right.
might, but thinking about this, I'm looking at the spy radar, and every single 100 of these objects disappeared on everyone's spy radars in the whole strike group at exactly the same spot in the sky. are near enough for
which
government.
you haven't talked about that before, correct?
I'm getting there right now.
Yeah.
They all disappeared 60 miles north of Guadalupe Island off the coast of Mexico. Yep. And when I say faded, they disappeared off our radar then. Whether they dropped off our radar coverage, I won't go into ranges and coverages and stuff like that because you got curvature of the Earth
Right.
and some of it's classified, of course. And plus my
I'm pretty
memory.
sure you could. I think
It
that
was
you
a
could
lot of years
safely
ago,
say that
so.
they probably didn't go off radar, right? That they literally, without giving away ranges and anything like that, it's your thought that these
Well,
probably faded to a point.
well, yeah, and the reason why I believe that is because unless I'm speaking out of school right, if my memory serves me, when Lou Elizondo and Tom DeLonge came here to the house in one of my first interviews, um, when this all started breaking for me personally, I was naive extremely at this point, at this whole thing, right? There was a lot of moving pieces I had no awareness of at this point. But anyway, as soon as I told him the Guadalupe story, he gets up out of his seat and says, "I'm going there," and they did. And apparently, as it turns out, the fishermen off Guadalupe is a real. That's where they do fishing. They have a lot of stories about these objects disappearing into the water, and they have for a long, 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 long time. Right in that
That
spot,
to me is it's pretty incredible because it's indicative of one of a couple things. Either they're going into the water,
or not.
and again, either massless or with some type of I don't want to say cloaking because I don't think that's the right thing, but some type of field around them that allows them to go into the water at high speed. Um,
Anti-grav
or
that nullifies the mass.
yeah,
There is mass, but
portal.
anti-grav, and so they're massless. If you're outside them, there's no gravitons interfering between. Gravity only works between them. For example, like our sun is much more massive than the Earth, so
Right.
it's the master and we're the slave, if you will.
Hmm.
The big overrides the small. So, um, if you can break that connection with anti-grav, then effectively there's no mass. If that makes any sense.
What about
That's the way I understand it. Hey, and I have to say I'm not a physicist. I'm an
no?
amateur, and that's based on just doing dedicated research and reading almost every day about it, which I do. You can ask. I drive my wife crazy. I'm constantly reading about something about science all day long.
Well, again, you're not alone there because, as I said, a lot of people that have had experiences come out of it feeling like there's either A, something bigger than us, B, we're obviously being visited by someone, somewhere, or something, whether you want to call it extraterrestrial, whether you want to call it interdimensional, or whether you want to call it, human 10.0, 12.0, which we'll get to in a little bit. But whatever those things are, there's a couple things that go along with them. One, there's a technological component that goes with it. So there's a technology above what humans are capable of, and I think that's been proven considerably over and over and over and over again. We either have a massive amount of fake radar data, mass delusion, or we have now observed something that is occurring on this earth, and it's not just the United States, it's not just off the coast, this happens all over the world. So we either have someone messing with us, a foreign power, which, if you think about it, they would have had to have gotten past how many technological advancements. You'd have to have anti-gravity, you'd have to have some type of acceleration, which means power, and then do all that without making a noise, without making a sound. We may have somewhere along the line crossed one of those barriers, but crossing all of those barriers doesn't make sense to me. It would be almost criminal to keep that type of technology away from human beings because there's so much that we could do. You could literally end drought, famine, and everything else because you could get there instantaneously, right? We could deliver humanitarian aid wherever we needed to do it, and we could do it within minutes and moments. that to me would be criminal to keep that type of technology away from humanity. I just don't see it happening. I don't believe that that's occurring. There's something outside existential, whatever you want to call it. There's something else out there that is able to do these things, and we're not it. We're just not it. The humans aren't there yet. I mean, look at where we are with our space program, right? We're using rockets. We're throwing massive amounts of power underneath the rocket and shooting it up into the air. Well, these things here obviously can get in and out. That's why they're now calling them multi-domain objects, because they're space, they're in the atmosphere, and they're in the water. So I don't buy the human component. I just don't. I can't see that occurring. I don't know how you feel about that, if we could have gotten there somehow. But to me personally, I think that is very lazy thinking. That it's a foreign power or it's a black project. I'm not buying it.
Um, what I think about it, okay, let's just take that. Let's say it's a flip of the coin, 50-50, because we don't know. That means both things are possible, right? In the case that it is a foreign government, question: how did that foreign government create UAP at 2,211 years ago when it's written in ancient documents? Did they go back in time and do it? And if they did, why? Yeah,
That right there begs the question: is it time travel? I mean, I don't have that definitive answer, but
no, what
you
I'm
are
doing is
correct. They're
what
all
I,
over.
what I'm doing is I'm adding to your thesis about why it's not us, because there's a history of this thing, man. We can't just focus on now. And these objects have been seen. I mean, you go back in history and look at all the ancient documents. They got all kinds of different names from them. In fact, these things have started world religions. Okay, the two major. I'm not religious, but if you go back and actually read the founding documents of the two major, and I won't even say what they are. You can figure that out on your own. The two major religions on the planet. These things were started by contact with something from the skies.
Mm-hmm.
Am I wrong?
Chariots of the
Well,
gods.
well, either that they were right and it was all divine. And again, I don't know.
Well, it's the
50-50
only
for
way
me.
they could figure it out.
50-50 for me.
They
I
they
don't know,
didn't
but
have an answer. It had to be a god. It couldn't have been a technology. It couldn't have been. It
right.
had to be a god, because
You
there's
can't
no frame
point.
of reference in
Yeah,
any
and you
way,
can't.
shape, or form.
What the hell would have I done? I would have done the same thing they did. I mean, they don't have the
Hmm.
frame of reference that we have today. At least I don't think. So we can't point
No.
fingers and
Well,
say, it
I
can't
don't
we
think they
can't
did. No.
we can't cast aspersions on them. We're talking about some really smart people here.
Hmm.
Think of the great works of art that were done, the statues and the poetry and the literature and the musical and the the the, the architecture. Wow,
I
really?
mean, we
These are
even from
smart
our point of
people.
view, we've only been flying for what 125 years, and now we're into
Yeah.
space. So that
So
leap between the Wright
that
brothers and now is insane.
in that whole argument that it was us, modern humans,
Hmm.
is not. Whoever says that watches too much cartoons. Frankly, I don't know
Yeah,
how
I
else.
would agree with that.
They've got
And
their mindset. They're not looking into it, and their mom told them that, and they're going to accept it,
right.
and that's okay. I mean,
We got
that's fine
into
if they
another
want.
thing that we talked about, that these so the FLIR videos that are out there, the ones that were leaked, and you and I have talked about that, and I'm not going to name any names, but you and I have talked about that, where they may have come from. I'm confident that's where they came from, but I was also told, and you kind of intimated a little bit, so I'll let you. I'm not going to use any words. I'll let you figure it out. I'll let you talk about it. But it is highly likely that it's not just FLIR videos, that there are plenty of very high quality videos of this encounter that are out there. And again, this is something new that we're talking about, um, that show these objects without a FLIR signal, so to speak, and in fact show them quite in their full glory, doing whatever it is that they're doing, both moving through the air as well as kind of some up close and personal things. Would you say that that's highly probable? Without, well, I don't think you're under an NDA, but I'll let you speak.
Well, yeah, I mean, a simple cell phone could get optical images, and so I mean, yeah, you're right. There was other things
They're out there.
besides Fleur recording these things, you bet.
Have
And
you ever had a chance to see any of them?
have I seen the videos? No. And the video is an important thing because, and I'm talking about the Tic Tac video where it suddenly goes, and this will, I got
Hmm.
to go to your left, so it suddenly goes off to the screen. That one, not the
Yep.
rotating one. The first time I had seen that MPEG, and it came out to me as an MPEG video on my secret side of my email inbox when I was in the Navy on the ship. The next morning after this happened, it was my job to draft messages. I was a message drafter at that point, and I was going to do an after action report on everything that had happened the day before. Well, I go all happy and lucky up to combat, sit down at the computer, getting ready to write it, and the senior computer tech walks in. And he says, "Senior Chief, I got something to tell you, and you're not going to like it." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, you know, we went to flight quarters last time. Remember hearing it? Because I was probably in my rack, you know. It happened in the nighttime. We call it a bed rack in the rack. He said, "Well,
Yeah.
I'm glad you're sitting down because whoever it was came on board the ship last night and they took all of our data, the radar, the comms, everything, and they told us they ordered us to erase all of our blank tapes."
How many times before had you ever done that?
That is the very first time I had been on writing ships at that point, 18 and a half years. I wrote on 3 Aegis cruisers and 3 aircraft carriers, 6 ships. And I
And
rode
that was
with a
the
lot of
first time.
I rode with a lot of allied ships. I could name them off: Australia, Japan, Korea. I spent a lot of time on ships, and we pretty much have standard
Hmm.
protocols across allied nations, and we never delete data for obvious reasons, right?
So
I mean,
this was
accident
as
reconstruction,
far outside the norm.
lessons learned, being able to construct messages like I was trying to do the next day. Um, I could name 10 different reasons why, and I'd miss some. It's never, ever, ever done. And so for it to happen when it did, for me, that raised some serious red flags, which is one of the reasons why I spoke out. Because what happened, just like what happened to your father in Vietnam when he saw these orbs? Your father did 3 tours in Vietnam, and he saw orbs in the jungle, about this size, and some of the ones are a little bit bigger, and they were white, if I'm mistaken. The color is important here. Were they white or?
Some were white, some were silver, but not silver, but like a flat gray, a matte
Okay,
gray. They weren't shiny,
right,
but they
right.
would go over the trees into the jungle, and then the ones that were over Tan Son Nhut Air Force Base were much bigger. Some of them were saucer shaped. He said, a football field in length, and would sit there for an hour. It
Say
would
say
just
the,
hover.
say the name of the base again.
Tan
What
Son
air?
Nhut Air Force
Okay,
Base.
okay.
It's
So so
TANSANHUNHUT, Tan Son Nhut.
okay, I've
This
heard
was
of
in
it.
67, 68.
I can't place it in my mind exactly where it is. I've heard the name though. Not my forte area. So anyway, my primary role was safety, getting aircraft and air crews to where they had to be and safely back home to their families. That was my primary concern. And so when this happened, I tried to speak out. Hey, we've got a safety of flight issue here, big time. It was the whole reason why I was able to intercept them because the captain didn't want to run into one like I didn't. If someone would have asked us why we were so damn curious, right? Why the hell didn't you intercept after the fact, right?
Right.
So when no one cared, God damn it, Steve, I got laughed at. I tried to speak out.
Hmm.
I'm not talking on board our ship. Of course, everyone on my ship knew, and our strike group knew. But when I tried to voice what we had seen at once we had all got back to port in meetings, you should have seen the looks on faces. They were like, "What in the frick have you been smoking, Senior Chief?" And I was actually asked that. by the way. What have you been smoking? All they heard was
Could they have
UF.
been trying to cover up?
All they heard was UFO. I got laughed out. I'm and so ship got back to port. I transferred to Commander Naval Air Forces Pacific, right on the island, and I did a couple years there and missed making Master Chiefs. I said, hell with it. No one believes me anyway. I'm going to get out. I was upset, and I'll
Yeah.
admit it. So I got out and went to work as a defense contractor. Again, I won't mention names. I don't have permission. Not how I roll. These are all
Hmm.
good people I'm talking about. Please remember that. And let me tell you this: if the shoe had been on the other foot, I would have been laughing at me. Understand? I was like your father. I
Hmm.
was a pretty straight stick dude. Radar. I'd never seen anything like this. I would have been doing the hardest laughing. All right. So and I knew that. Even now, I don't hold anyone responsible. Nope, no way. Because I have to hold my damn self responsible doing that. It ain't honest. It'd be easy to sit here now and say I would have done it different. That's bullshit. And I know it. I ain't gonna do that. They're damn good people. So, anyway, I go to defense contracting, and the same thing happens again. No one would believe me. Refused to. So I said, you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna go back to school, get my master's degree. But during the interim, I went back. I was living in Phoenix at the time. I said, yeah, I know what I'm gonna do. I got an idea because I love to write. I'm a writer. So I'm gonna write a short story about Tic Tac, and I'm gonna fictionalize the whole thing. And I'm even gonna name the ships. I'm gonna change the date, and I'm gonna change the players, the actual people. But I'm gonna name the ships. I'm gonna say the word Tic Tac. I'm going to describe the whole thing to a T. The number 0.78 is even in the book. And I wrote a bunch of other short stories, and I called the book Sailor's Anthology. And this was my plan. I was going to hide it, just in case this story ever did come to light. My little story would be proof, smoking gun proof, that it really happened. And you know where I decided to publish it? In the
Where?
Library of Congress. I published my book in February 2009 in the Library of Congress. Got my Library of Control number and went on in life, just in case.
Awfully tough to
So
dispute that.
yeah, well that's why I'm sitting here now, because I did that. I'll tell you how that happened. I came back home. I'm sitting home now in my hometown. Ended up in the wilderness, and this is how it changed me. Looking for gold, and I found it. Boy, howdy did I. My family has owned a gold placer mining claim here since 1923, active, back in the Kalmiopsis wilderness called Bald Eagle. And I remember interviewing my grandfather, rest in peace, and he said, Kevin, you don't understand. I said, what, sir? He said, we weren't mining gold nuggets, like to kiln type bench gravels. The type of gold we were getting was so fine that we lost more than we ever recovered. I was like, what? He said, yeah. You look at it through a microscope, magnifying glass, and it looked like little tiny snowflakes. I was like, okay, I'm no geologist, I'm no mineralogist, I'm no miner, but that did not make sense to Kevin. So I get back there and I figured it out. I said, well, this gold has to be coming from someplace close to the surface, otherwise it looked like a little tiny ball bearing. So that got me
Right.
digging. Yeah, I said, there's got to be some research published on this geology somewhere. So I started looking and I figured out that our mining claim, and there's a reason why I'm going into this in detail.
Yep.
Um, our mining claim is actually associated with a much, much, much larger piece of geology. And it's fascinating. It's called the Josephine ophiolite. Now, an ophiolite is a section of land that begins at the spreading arcs out in the oceans. In this case, Pacific spreading arcs. And that section of land took 157 million years to get here. And remember, along spreading arcs, you've got hydrothermal vents all along them, and they're laying down these little. And I'll use the word thin, although that's not accurate geologically. If you can imagine it, though, they're laying down these little thin layers of pre-sorted mineral layers. Mineral layers. You'll have a layer of iron, a layer of nickel, a layer of magnesium, a layer of gold, on and on and on, and maybe everything on the periodic table. Because they are hydrothermal vents are Earth's original mineral sorters. Anyway, so normally when that type of land is obviously really, really, really heavy, and normally what happens when it comes into contact with continental plates, it subducts because it's heavier. But when it does get stuck on top of a continental plate, it's called an ophiolite. That's what we have here. It's called the Josephine ophiolite. That's where the gold was coming from. And that's kind of where I gave up because this mining claim is in the middle of the Kalmiopsis wilderness. I got to tell you, Steve, I would defend that piece of ground with my life. 157 million years old and unbelievably beautiful. Primordial plants and animals you can't believe. Big old black bear. You got to watch your ass there, man. I almost lost my life there twice. Anyway, so I kind of gave up. I published my research on the internet and went on in life. I went on in life, and I ended up coming out of the wilderness. I was separated legally from my now ex-wife. She was in Sacramento. I'd been changed. Ended up in the wilderness and was flat broke. I had an income, but I didn't have no house. I was houseless. Come out of the mountain and didn't get the house that I wanted on a friend's ranch. And I said, dang it, what am I going to do? I went into town here in Cave Junction and was going to look on Craigslist for sale by owner. I was desperate. And I'm not crying because for me, I'm crying because this is so freaking fascinating and
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. My tears are from a place of beauty. And
Well, I
thanks.
also
And thanks.
you experienced something that nobody else, well, others near you had, but
I
it ended
know.
up being a situation where I think it puts you into a different realm of thinking,
Yeah,
and
but
that's
try to
part of
imagine
it right there.
the sequence of events here. So I roll out of the wilderness, no house. I go to order breakfast. I take my laptop, looking on for sale by owner, nothing. Order breakfast and I eat. I said, "What the hell?" I'm gonna look one more time, and all of a sudden there was this house there, out of the blue. And I'll be goddamn if I didn't know the house. My mom used to take me there all the time when I was a boy. That house, the old lady loved me. I bought it. Her ashes were on the her ashes were on the fireplace. When I walked in the door, how? How? How was that possible?
It's crazy the way the
I
things
know.
cyclically work out.
Serendipity, man. That's one
It
of the reasons
is.
why I bring this up because if you have an encounter, and I lost your video by the way, yeah, serendipity is a huge part of this.
Hmm.
And I've been told that it's signs that you're on the right path. Keep going, you're on the right path. So anyway,
Well,
I
I
didn't
think
know
some
it.
of that comes down to the consciousness with this as well. Is that
Oh,
there is
absolutely,
some there
absolutely.
is a consciousness
We're
that goes along.
we're gonna get into that. So anyway, I had free time and was bored, and I love to golf, so I started volunteering at the golf course, and I met a gentleman there, Robert Muswick Sr. He's gone now, and we hit it off because, like your dad, he was in World War II, and he was on a submarine in Pearl Harbor, when the Japanese attacked, and his sub was out to sea. But when he came back into port, he had to um, help out with rescue and assistance in Pearl Harbor,
Hmm.
and he saw some pretty horrible things. You know, some of his old friends no longer in places he used to frequent gone, that kind of thing. You know, so he had
Yep.
post trauma his whole life. And we really hit it off. He hung out the golf course, and he really liked me. I used to come over to this house I have now, and help him out. I really liked him. Rest in peace. He had told his family, "Hey, when I go, give Kevin a chance to buy this house," and I did. I sold mine. My house had jumped way up in value in 2 years because of the whole marijuana thing that was going on. I was just in the right place at the right time and the right piece of property on the right piece of farmland, believe it or not. And I'd paid 70,000 in 2 years to the day. It was worth 174. So it gave me 100,000 down that I needed to buy this house to the penny. My credit was so bad, the bank demanded it, and I was able to do it. I know. Wow. And so that brought me back down to the golf course. Was volunteering, and I had just reopened the kitchen. And I was walking out with a plate of food, and the MPEG, the Tic Tac video we were talked about earlier. We were watching the golf tournament, and I was walking out. Do. Hey, Bob. I was gonna
I know
yell,
what that is.
your food's ready. And all of a sudden, the CNN broke into the golf tournament, and guess what was playing on CNN was a Tic Tac video. My brother, I was so friggin' shocked. I dropped the plate of food and went running out of there. Because you know why?
The
I
weight had
knew
to have felt lifted.
I knew where evidence was. I knew I'm the only one on the planet that knew where actual smoking gun evidence was actually hidden, that actually proved Tic Tac actually happened. Unless I have a time machine.
That's right.
Yeah, how the hell else did it get published in February '09 if it didn't happen? And here it was 2017. And I was told, I won't drop the name, that my book, the reality of my book was one of the reasons why it was decided they had to come out and say, yeah, it's real. There was no way to disprove my book. That's what I
Unless
heard.
you are unless you're the world's best psychic. I mean, it's just, there's things that
Yeah,
I've talked about with the people that have come forward to me that there were some things about some laser systems and some other things that were discussed with me that came out, and a month later, all of a sudden, after I'd been told by 3 different PhDs that lasers can't be cooled in this way, all of a sudden they came out that the Chinese had it. So there's these, I don't know what you've heard as far as um, you've talked to a lot of people, and I don't want you to name any names. You don't have to do that. But with reverse engineering,
well, if I have permission, I will.
the thing,
Yeah, if if I have
yeah.
permission, I'll mention names. Yeah, yeah, but
So,
absolutely every day. Yeah, you're
yep,
talking
there
about the.
are programs out there
Yep,
that the United States government and other governments are fully aware.
of course,
They have intact
and they have
vehicles, and this is
and they
coming
have
not
reasons.
just from. Go ahead.
They have reasons
Go ahead.
to keep it quiet. Yeah, I mean, there's reasons that I'm not going to point fingers because there's probably some extremely good reasons why our governments have been trying to keep this reality from us. And because you got to remember, Steve, we're not talking about evil people here. No, no,
No,
no,
I
no.
know.
The people who work in government and CIA and all of it, man, they have families just like we do. And I
Hmm.
know I'm generalizing, okay? But these are not evil people. These are good people. And they're tasked with doing a job that's incredibly important. And you have to remember, what the hell would you do if you were in their shoes, Sworn to protect and serve. That's what you would do, right? And in
I
good
think it
conscience.
is. I think there's
Yeah.
there's pieces to it that I think should come out and are coming out. You know, you
You know,
talked
it is.
about
Yep, and it
right.
is.
You
Yep.
talked about with Lou. I think there needs to be an acknowledgement that there is non-human intelligence, and you can call it NHI, you can call it alien, you can call it extraterrestrial, whatever nomenclature you want to give to it. I think there needs to be at least that much of an acknowledgement, and to say, listen, there is a technology that is a part of this phenomenon that, for reasons we don't want our adversaries to get, we can't let it out. We just can't because of XYZ. And whatever XYZ is, that's fine. I don't need to know that, but I do believe that we owe our kids and our grandkids um, the knowledge that it's part of our existence and that we at least acknowledge it. And I'm not saying that you bring the technology right to the forefront right now, but there needs to be a knowledge given to the future generations that this is this and this is this. And again, when I say this or this or this or this, I have snippets of it, right? I've talked to people that have worked on these programs, and I have snippets. I don't have the whole thing. I just don't have it. I'm not that deep. Um, but I know, like I said, as we talked about, there's a technology involved in this um, that is way beyond anything that we understand currently, and probably hundreds, if not thousands, of years into the future. We're not there. Um, I just think we owe it to that part of humanity, and it's not just the United States; it's all over the world. Everybody has a right to know where they are from an existential point of view. I truly believe that.
Yeah, and and everything you said is true, of course. And also, I think one of the reasons why it's been so slow coming out is because it's kind of embarrassing not to know. It's like we all expect the government to know, but what if they don't themselves? I mean, that doesn't give people a lot of, doesn't give you a warm fuzzy.
No,
So they have to be careful, you know. They don't want to freak people out um, unnecessarily.
I'm at
But
the point though, if we've gotten this far and there hasn't been any massive amount of
there you go.
um,
There you go.
malevolence,
There you go.
um,
Just hit it on the
what
head. You just
you
hit
know,
it on the
what
head.
is the? Let us know it's there, and we'll work it out together. Open it up to science, frankly. Open it up to university, and I know there's a certain amount of it that is that's especially with MIT. I know someone through MIT. I live in Boston, so I know somebody through MIT that I went to high school with that still works. Is a professor at MIT. Um, that hasn't worked directly on these programs, but knows that hey, they've had components of things that we have never seen before. Like it's not a human. It's tough to make the stretch to say not human, but I can tell you that he's seen pieces of technology that are beyond anything that they could come up with and think about. So it's a difficult. It's again, start at the beginning and say we're not alone. This is what it is. We're not sure of all of it, but at least let us know and let us move forward with that. Excuse me.
Well, you brought up a couple points I'd like to talk about a little bit. Technology, and you kind of hinted around why they're here. If I could kind of break down my thoughts on that, if it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll begin with a question. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a series of questions. If then statement, like yes or no, like flip of
Mm-hmm.
a coin. 50-50 is the answer, right? As you'll soon see. Okay, let me start. Was the Big Bang intentional or unintentional? I don't know. So I assign it 50-50 because I don't know. I have to, right? Unless you can tell me it was, no, Kevin was actually 49-51. Then I'll stop right here. If that's the case, stop me. Okay, so since no one's stopping me, I'll continue. Either it was intentional or it was non-intentional. Let's focus on it was intentional for just a second. For sake of argument, let's assume that the Big Bang was intentional. We won't go into the how and why and all that right now. We're just focusing, was it intentional or not? It's all. Yes or no? Okay, yes. I have two questions related to that. One, what would an intentional universe look like? And two, what happened to the intender after the Big Bang? Did the intender of the Big Bang choose to survive the Big Bang, or did the intender of the Big Bang choose to commit a cosmic suicide? 50-50, I don't know. Let's explore the chose to survive scenario. Okay, we'll go with that one just for sake of argument. Let's say the intender did the Big Bang intentionally and chose to survive it. Okay, so now the intender's alive after the Big Bang. Did the intender at that point choose to take a form of a non-fundamental force, totally benign, non-fundamental, non-functional, and no nothing? Or did the intender choose to become a fundamental force? And I guess there could be a third choice. I'm not sure what it would be. Again, 50-50, I don't know. Let's go with the intender chose survival, must be wanting to be a force. Let's go with fundamental force. That's interesting. Through a chain of yes no questions, now I'm arrived to the point where there could be another fundamental force. We know there exists gravity. We know there exists strong and weak nuclear force, and we know there exists electromagnetism. We know the four existing fundamental forces. I think there's probably a fifth one. It's called intention. Intention. And by definition, intention itself has to be the grandmother of all the other fundamental forces because it was the original. And not only that, intention, just like the other fundamental forces like gravitons, it has to have force carriers. And I've taken the liberty of naming the force carriers intentatons. Like we have gravitons. And like we have different types of electromagnetism. I mean, there's physics behind this. And what I think is, and it's actually a physics, just like we can engineer things, objects from electromagnetism and nuclear forces and gravity. Something out there is engineering things from intention. Wow. If so, that explains a lot, doesn't it? It that is the type of physics that would give you the type of amazing abilities we're seeing in these UAP craft. These things are imbued on the nanotechnical level, like on the micro level. They're imbued with consciousness and intent. Not just consciousness, but an intention. There's a big difference between being conscious and being intentful. They are imbued with intent. Okay, if you're still with me on this logic, and it could be totally bullshit. Everything I just said could be
Nope,
total
I'm
bullshit.
following.
But all I did was go down it was like I laid it out like you would a math problem, okay? If then.
Hmm.
And I've totally admitted the other the answer could be no all the way through. I fully admit that. But
You actually laid out a computer program. If this, then that. If this, then that. That's how computer programs are written.
you betcha. And yeah, it's, do it algorithmically,
Hmm.
statistically. I mean, it's
Right.
common, well-known mathematics.
Right.
That's right. Um, so what is that intent? That's a very good question. I think I know. And I think it's the reason why we're seeing these things off Guadalupe Island, by the way. um, and I'm gonna kind of backtrack on so this makes some sense. The human DNA and all biological DNA, as far as I know, is constructed. The lattice structure of the DNA's spiral structure
The double
is all
helix.
connected. One side is the phosphate, and the other side is sugar, and 50-50. And I'm not talking about table sugar. I'm talking about organic
Right.
sugar here.
Glucose.
Yeah, glucose. And the the pairs that go between them are all bonded by hydrogen, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah,
Hmm.
I believe it's hydrogen bonds on all of them. So we know that phosphate's important. It it creates DNA, and then the DNA creates RNA, and from the RNA we get amino acids, and then from the amino acids we get proteins, biological life.
Hmm.
So without phosphate, I don't see how you get biological life through the DNA process. And let me ask you something. Where is the very purest form of phosphate on planet Earth? Where would you might find that?
The purest
Nasty
form of phosphate, I don't know.
hydrothermal vents.
Through what you were talking about before.
Yeah,
So the actual building blocks of the Earth.
yeah. I believe whatever these objects are, they're going down to the purest source of phosphate they can find on our planet, hydrothermal vents, and they're gathering it. They're here for our rocks. That's why they're here. These objects are. I know it sounds crazy, but they are here for our rocks. And what they're doing with this phosphate is they are taking seeds, if you will, and they're taking them out there and they're placing them on planets in their Goldilocks zones so that in a billion years from now, a single photon might hit this phosphate rock with the organic sugar on it and all of a sudden spark DNA. Wow. Photons are creating life, I think. Maybe even FRBs. There's some type of magnetic rift. Maybe it's FRB or something. There's some very strong source of power, and it's so random that it might take a billion years for it to ever happen. Um, and again, I could be full of bullshit, but you know what, Steve? At least I have some sort of working theory. I haven't heard anyone come up with a theory that's at all logical. It makes some sort of
No.
sense. And
From a
so
panspermia point of view, it actually makes sense.
yeah, this I call it interstellar transpermia. That's what I call it. And I'm using the word prima directive because whatever these they are, they're imbued with the prime directive to spread life in the universe.
Do you believe they're unmanned?
I didn't hear you.
Do you believe that they are unmanned?
The actual UAP craft,
Yeah.
I don't believe there's any need to have man in them. Nope. They can
Do you
because they're quantumly entangled with them. They could be man
do you believe
quoted.
that there's
They
so
could be man
if
quoted.
you've heard about David? Yeah. You've heard David Grush, obviously, right?
You were broke.
David Grush.
Yeah. Well, I thought you were talking about Kaiser. I got his book right here.
Oh no,
I heard you
David
say,
Grush.
yeah,
Oh
I know
yeah,
who
no,
David
I've
Grush
read
is.
that too. So
Yeah.
he posits that there are biologics that came along with this. Do you believe that there are more than one of these things out there? Whether these are seeding mechanisms, or do you believe that um, there are multiple things occurring at the same time?
Define what you mean by things.
Um, Actual entities on Earth versus different types of craft, because obviously, like I said, my dad saw the orbs, and then he saw a disc. And now we're talking with your encounter, we're talking about
Oh, I got
tic
you.
tac
I
objects.
understand what you're saying.
So
Yeah.
so there's not one particular thing.
In fact, there's at least two different types of it in NHI, non-human intelligence, and I use the words benevolent and non-malevolent. Some of them are a little bit more nasty than the loving ones, but I say that with all due respect because even the ones that are non-malevolent, they love us too. Otherwise, we'd be dead already. Okay, but
Mhm.
here's the case: even if my own brother was trying to kill me, I'm going to defend myself. I'm sorry, but I am right.
Right.
So they're the same way. If we're shooting missiles at them, what do we expect them to do? So, well, thanks for the missile. I needed one. Are they
Yeah.
going to try to
Hey,
admit
thanks.
it, or So come on, if that's one of my recommendations. Chill, take a chill pill. Don't shoot at these things, man. Dang.
So there's a lot going on with the I'll use phenomenon, enigma, whatever you want to use. There's a lot going on with it that I think there's a lot of moving parts, and you have people that have had different encounters where they've said that they've been abducted. Again, I don't know enough about that to really speak too much about it. I focus my energies very much on the physics and the physical things that are manifested, whether you want to call that through holographic principle or you want to say that there are three-dimensional objects in our world right now from a different area or from a different. I'm a firm believer in some of the portal theory and some of the theory behind Einstein-Rosen bridges and travel, modes of travel that can be utilized because they all mathematically make sense. We can put them down on a piece of paper and we can prove that they make sense, at least from a mathematics standpoint. Um,
Yep.
but some of the things we can't do is, you talked about something coming from somewhere else, and that's one of my articles that I had written about was how orbs and tic tacs move and fly, and part of that relies upon an external force and an external energy source. Somehow, somewhere, they're picking up massive, massive amounts of energy. Where that's coming from, I don't actually know. And to the people that have kind of put that theory forward to me, they don't know either. It's an unknown, but it's known that once they're able to do that and able to take in that energy from wherever it's coming from, and it may not be energy, it may be intent, exactly what you're saying. Um, they're able to then complete whatever it is that they need to do, whether they're moving through our space, whether they're moving through ocean, whether they're moving to the moon and back. And again, these are things that there's a lot of supposition out there, and there's a lot of people that are saying a lot of different things. I can only talk from the point of view of where and what I have learned from the people that I have spoken with. And some of these things make sense, some of them don't. I've heard other theories I've never put out there because they physically don't make sense. But then again, if you're talking about specifically time as being nonlinear, then time is moving at all times at the same time. So past, present, future is all. I don't know how much I totally believe that. I believe it's nonlinear, but at the same time, and there are mathematical equations that say that this is occurring. I find it difficult that we're seeing that all the time. I think that, one of the things that was said was some of these craft look like they're skipping when you look at them. And that comes down to a time dilation type thing. So when I say that there is a technology along with this phenomenon, there's something, and that may not be technology, maybe that's just a fundamental part of our universe. But there's a connectedness, there's a intent, and then there is, a consciousness that goes along with that. I don't think it's a consciousness in that you're saying, okay, there's one brain, God, that is controlling all this. I think it's a mission that is almost like stamped in their DNA or in that DNA to move the universe along whichever way. So it does make sense to me that you're saying they come for our rocks and then they're taking that phosphorus and they're moving on. It does to me, that actually makes a lot of sense because, depending on the that type of resource throughout the universe, I don't know, how much there is here, there, or anywhere. But we're talking about, even right now, we're talking about NASA's going to look at, I think it was the Psychos mission or something like that, that they're going to look at a rock in space that is showing signs that there are additional elements. We may not even know what they are. So we may not have the full picture of what's out there here on Earth because it's only by actually going out and searching and looking for it that we're going to actually find these things. So let's say they go to this rock out in space and they find 10 new elements that we didn't even know existed. Well, that rewrites just about everything that we know, doesn't it? Because without those elements, maybe we can't get to here. And if without more elements, we can't get to there. So I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but your idea behind that, but seeding other places, it makes sense, and it seems like we're on an billion year timetable as opposed to 100 year timetable. So, you know, a lot of it's I don't think we have all the information. I don't think we have it all.
Oh, definitely not. No, of course not. And I lost my train of thought. I was going to make a point, but go ahead. Go ahead with your next question.
So, so one of the things I want to get back a little bit to the Tic Tac because I think we're talking about new information that has come out. Do you think um, when these things were going off radar, when they were dropping off radar, do you think it was the distance, or do you think that they were entering either an ocean or portal? What is your kind of, you think they were going in the water, right?
Yeah, I do. Yep. I think that's where they
And
descended down and went straight down into the water. And the reason why I say that now is from the luxury of having the information now that I didn't have before, and that's the testimony from the fishermen saying, "Hey, we've been seeing these things for long. Where you guys been? We've been seeing them forever." Essentially. Yep.
is that geological area, does that have that same characteristic that you were talking about? Is
In
that
fact, well,
why?
in fact, I've been trying to get some research on that because right now I don't have the answer. I don't want to speak out of school on it.
You suspect it?
I don't. That's one of the things I'm confused about. Actually, I did. I never thought before there's hydrothermal vents in that spot, so I'm not sure. To be honest with you,
Could just be a movement through time and space in that area.
or maybe they have one of these new Chinese lasers and they can mine it. They can mine minerals from the bottom of the ocean with it, which, oh, by the way, is one of our fears now. But if I could just make that point real quick, okay, we know the Chinese have this laser now, right? You can mine without destroying the host rocks. And guess where that's going to go? Probably it's going to go to the unmined spots, which is our seabeds.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it's what is it?
Well, boy,
90% of the ocean's unexplored.
but think about this question: Who owns the seafloors? Which country? Technically, if you do the research, the United Nations does, right? So let's
Mm-hmm.
say that we get this technology, we start mining in the ocean, and all of a sudden we happen to cross someone's notional boundary. And they're like, hey, you can't cross there. You can't mine there. That's our mine spot. Oh boy, that could be a new contention.
Mm-hmm.
Just saying. Anyway,
Well, it's all about
I,
space and
I
where you're
digress.
gonna live.
Anyway, yeah, there's types of technology here that's which is, oh, by the way, I think one of the reasons why the government had to come out and say, yeah, these things are real, is because I think they've known and they now know that humans are not in control of this disclosure agenda. These things are going to come whether we want them to or not. For whatever reason, there's nothing we can do to
Why
stop it.
haven't they been showing themselves en masse? Why
Well,
aren't they
I'll
everywhere?
tell you. Well, let me tell you, because they don't freaking trust us. I mean, look at us now. We're fighting a war because of what?
Two wars.
Yeah, because of what? When you peel the onion on it, it all comes down to ancient documents written 3,000 years ago that created beliefs based on very, 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 very little evidence. By the way, 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 way less evidence we have now about UAP, by the way.
I was just gonna say we have more information about UAP than we do about religions that
X,
started.
Y, and Z. X, Y, and Z,
Mm-hmm.
anything you can name in antiquity, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
yeah, but we accept that as, just the, and the other reason why they've avoided us is because they love us. I felt a presence of love I can't describe in '04. I wasn't at all concerned from a hostile point of view. I felt a presence of love that I cannot describe. It was awesome. It was beautiful. But the reason why they have avoided us is because they don't want to kill us. They are afraid that if they just show up world on a mass scale, that every human on the planet will end up going through what I went through back in the wilderness. My ontological shock was extreme. And I'm not religious. Just
Mm-hmm.
think what's going to happen, Steve, worldwide. If these things suddenly showed up and everyone's face are crushed in a heartbeat,
Well, it makes you have to rethink everything about what we are
that's
as a
that's
human.
why they haven't shown up in en masse. I think.
Do you think that when we
I mean,
when
what do they care for us? They don't want us. They don't want to lose this planet. You know how important this planet is to interstellar transpermia. Earth is a nursery in the cosmos. There's others like us out there, but we are pretty damn rare. We have salty oceans. We have hydrothermal vents. We're in the Goldilocks zone around our own sun. We have atmospheres. We have everything needed to support biological life. And that's pretty damn rare in the universe. And that's why they show up around these. They don't want to lose this. Just think if there was a global thermonuclear war, for Christ's sakes. What happens to their nursery?
well, and that's one of the things that I also had been talking about before, and that is not a theory that you're alone in. In that the first person that I first came out with that had come to me, which by the way has a familial relation. Everybody kind of asks, well, why did this person come to me? I'll just say they have a familial relationship to me that I didn't know initially. I found out about it later, but that's why this person came to me. This person was a high level C
Uh,
level.
was it an oopsie daisy moment?
It wasn't. No, it wasn't quite there. It could have been. It could have been, but no, the timing. I'm not quite that old. So,
Okay,
I just turned 50, and this person knew somebody from my past.
I got you.
Yeah,
I need,
I'll leave it at that. I could tell you
I
off
needed,
camera I don't mind, but here I'm.
I needed some music.
Um,
Sorry.
yeah. So, so this person kind of followed me my whole life and knew who I was, and when they talked about, and this was a C level within a defense contractor, a big defense contractor, and showed me some videos, showed me some evidence of stuff. But then when we talked about the technology that was involved in this, and the things that they're trying to reverse, and a lot of this comes down to their laser systems. And again, I talked about this before any of this other stuff came out, and then people went, oh, well, I guess he knew a couple things. Fine, I don't need it. It doesn't need to be that my testimony was a big deal because, quite frankly, it didn't come from me. I just talked about it. I just reported on what I heard. It didn't come out of me in any way, shape, or form.
That's what I do.
Um,
And if I have a theory, that's what I
it didn't.
say. I always add the words
Yeah,
or not or mine. Yeah. This is
right
what I
or
think.
not.
Yeah.
So you get, when you talk about these things, especially with the systems that are involved. Excuse me, my nose is itchy. The systems that are involved, like I said, there's a technology that goes along with this, a physical, tangible, tacit technology that goes along with this. It's there. Um, you saw it on radar. Fravor saw it eye to eye, and as we've learned, there's probably some pretty epic video out there of these that are a lot clearer than just a little grainy black and white FLIR video.
It wouldn't surprise me.
Um,
Yeah. I'll leave it at
yeah,
yeah. It wouldn't shock
yeah,
me.
I'll leave it. Yeah, we'll leave it at that.
I've never
And
seen it.
then we'll also, yep. But it makes sense because they're onboard cameras even in 2004. So I'll leave it at that. So we also know that with these physical things, there's something going on, supernatural, metaphysical, whatever you want to call it, because you've obviously experienced it. And just about everybody that I've ever talked to um, has experienced some form of consciousness that goes along with it. So I think if you don't talk about that along with the objects or along with the technology or along with the NHI, whatever you want to call it, you're missing a part of it. Um, there's debunkers that are out there that have looked at the FLIR videos, especially the one that rotates, that say it was parallax or it was this or it was that. And I'm not saying their names because I'm not giving them the satisfaction. What do you say to stuff like that? I mean, are they being disingenuous? Are they genuinely trying to obfuscate facts and truth, or are they being genuine and seeing what they think that they're seeing? Because these are not experts. These aren't guys that look at radar screens or look at FLIR videos. They don't do this for a living. They do this as a, I want to say, as debunk. What do you say to stuff like that? Do you just let them go on? And because they do have followings, they have people that, it's a big thing. They have to look at everything, and it's a this or it's a that or it's that. It does not have any other explanation towards the NHI or towards the UAP phenomena at all. It's got to be explainable. Is that just our own human fallibility that we are unable to make the connection that this is not human, it's not us? Or is that something that, do you think, that could be people in placement that are working against this for whatever reason?
Well, my initial, my standard operating procedure with people that are deniers, um, is I say, I have an open mind, and if you're right, so be it. I don't care. I just want to know the truth, and this is what you believe, so show me. Point to some research that you've done or you have, or show me some data. And you know what tends to happen, Steve? Crickets, because they can't.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, when I foster a theory or something, I can I can point you exactly to the research papers that I cite. As you know, I'm on an email chain with some of the top physicists on this planet,
Mm-hmm.
and I have the luxury of knowing some of them and corresponding with some of them. And a lot of stuff I post on Facebook, it was given to me. Hey, post this. Let's talk about it. Get people looking at this stuff. That's my whole role here. My job here right now is to be an agent for change, to help get the world ready for what's about to happen. Because if
2024 has been mentioned as something that's going to be
because
a
I'm
bit of
telling you,
a
Steve,
shock.
if what happens to the entire planet, what happened to me happens to the entire planet all at the same time, my brother, that is not going to end well. Nope. So the reason why I care about this so much is because I care about planet Earth. I know it sounds freaking corny. I care about
Well, no,
humanity.
you live up there in God's country. You get some beautiful country up where you live. So
I
I don't
love
I
it.
don't get that same view. I get some view. I get the coast here. I'm in Massachusetts, so I do see the coast. But you're up there in God's country.
I love humanity, and I want to be one of the ones that, if I can, that helps get, especially the next generation,
Mm-hmm.
because kids they're gonna have a luxury of things that we didn't grow up with, like stigmata will be gone for them.
Right.
That's my goal. My goal is like this: Mommy picks up Sally and Joey from school, and they're driving home, and all of a sudden Sally says, "Hey, Joey, look, it's one of those things we learned about in Mrs. Smith's class." Everyone checks it out, and they go home to Daddy, and they tell Daddy, and it's no big deal. Same ditto for when they tell the neighbor, no big deal now. No, 10 years ago, if you'd have tried that, what would have happened to Mom, Joey, and Sally?
Yeah. They'd have been
That's gone.
thrown out of town.
That's gone. Down here in the local store, I'll be standing in the checkout aisle, and I'm hearing people 3 aisles down talking about UFOs. You would have, with an accepting frame of mind,
Mm-hmm.
the whole psychology has changed and changing more and more and more every day.
Well, I
I
believe it started to
have
change
a
with your
question.
story.
I have a question on this. We just intercepted one of the meteorites that was coming in, and they went up and got rocks off it because they were looking for
Yeah.
certain chemicals needed for life, right? And just what if they found fully formed DNA on board that thing? That would
It
prove
would
my
mean that
theory.
DNA is pretty capable.
That would that would prove my theory. That would prove my theory that photons are hitting, I think it's phosphate rock with sugars, organic sugars, just so. And when I mean just so, it has to be done in the presence of a microcline crystal, probably. I'm guessing on that part because the light rays have to be split, and it has to enter just so into the and the, I love poetry. The way I put it is life-spawning photons seeding the quantum wombs of rocks. That's how I say it. So that one tiny photon, and they've just done the research, it came out 2 months and a half ago, I believe, that a single photon can spark photogenesis in a very similar way to the way I'm suggesting. I took that as a serendipitous moment for myself because it kind of gave me validation of to my the way I was thinking here. Because if they find DNA on this asteroid, um, with no life, and the reason why, well, you can have DNA without life because remember, you can have DNA, but the RNA might form and the amino acids might form, but the proteins might not because that sucker's out there in space, right? It's in an ether of nothing. Um, it's not in a Goldilocks zone. There's no atmosphere. It doesn't have anything that supports biological life. So it could have got everything done up to that moment, and they might find it on these objects and on these rocks. In fact, I'm going to be shocked if they don't. To be honest with you. So I could be right in two ways. In this case, a meteorite could have seeded life on Earth in much the way I described, or or it could have been both things, or Earth itself biology itself was seeded by them in the same way that our nursery now seeds other potential host planets, if you
So
will.
by us becoming a nursery, they were able to then come to us and then take that and then seed additional.
They have for a long, 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 long time. They laugh at us when we consider, hey, they're on my mining claim. No, these things have mining claims, and that's why they're fighting. They're kind of in a I've kind of, and I'm speculating. A lot of this stuff is speculation. I know, and I've said that. I can't say that enough. But the benevolence and the non-benevolence are kind of in a peace agreement, and they've each got their certain spots where they mine, if you will, because they don't get along that well. Because one branch is one race, if I could use that word, or nastier. They're more bent around the axle with the prime directive. They want to get life done out there, and they're not going to put up with a bunch of unruly humans getting in their way. Put it that way. So if we shoot missiles at them, they're going to defend themselves,
Shoot back. Yeah.
or they're going to do what they have to do. Right? They don't want to get killed, or or disrespected, or anything like that. That so these things have mining camps. So if we come along and we start mining the sea bottoms, um, there's some existential things that could happen here real soon. Number one,
Hmm.
all of a sudden nations start flighting over the seafloors, and guess what? But we don't. None of us really own them. NHI owns them. If you really want to get technical about it, that's how mining claims work. First one to post a claim owns it. That's how a placer claim works. Yep. And the way it works is, just so you know, is like the bald eagle mines. Those things, when you have a gold mining claim, it goes from the upper topology where the land and birds and creeks and mountains are, and it goes all the way down to the center of the earth. There's never been
So
an issue
everything in
before
between.
because you couldn't get down way down there, so no one gave a rat's ass. But now you can. And here's what happened when I did my research. I might have someone coming in the driveway. When I did my research, right, I kind of gave up. It was 68 pages and really technical research that I had done on the Josephine ophiolite. And I realized what it was. I said, there's no way this is ever going to get mined, and I'll defend it, you know. So I said, screw it. I published it on the internet, and I went on in life, and all this stuff happened, and I knew that Elon Musk probably had heard of me. And I read that him and MZ out of Japan, they're going to do a SpaceX flight. They're going to go around the backside of the moon and come home, hopefully. And they were offering
Hmm.
eight from civilians. They say, hey, we're going to take 8 civilians with us. Go ahead and apply. But you have to tell us why you want to go to even be considered. So I did. I sent them my research geology. This is why I want to go. This is directly related. This is who I am. And, I was confident they at least heard my name, right? Because these are not dumb people. And guess what happened, Steve? I sent them my geology report. I was right out here in the yard, yeah, maybe 20 feet from where I'm sitting. And all of a sudden, and I'm an airplane guy, right? It was my career. And all of a sudden, I see this huge white plane flying low and slow, north, south, right over the wilderness. And then they got that one east, west, east, west, east, west, all over Oregon. And I was like, oh, wow, what in the hell is that? You're not supposed to do that. It's a wilderness. You can't fly a jet airplane that large and that slow over the wilderness. What in the frick is going on? So I run in the house. I jump on the internet, and one of my friends, I told him, he said, Kevin, I hope you're sitting down. You're not going to believe this. So what? I can believe about anything at this point. He said, dude, that
Yeah.
was a NASA flight on a geodetic mission. Geodetic mission. I got the photograph of it. I'll send it to you. It's what it
I
is.
have
It's
it. You sent it to me. I
called
have it.
flight tracking radar, and it shows the course they took. And they did loops right around my mining claim, right over the top of my mining claim. So
Awfully amazing timing.
I do not have confirmation, but inherently I have to assume that that plane wasn't there by accident. Number one, and two, it was probably there because
No.
my research got in the right hands. I'm speculating again.
Awful good timing.
Yeah, or it's a coincidence, and which is more likely, right? Um,
Yeah.
Abductive logic suggests that the most simple answer is probably the correct one, so I'm going with that. Now, here's the beauty of this, and the reason why they were flying on it at the time is because I gave them a suggestion. I said, Elon, Mr. Musk, I said, this thing's unmineable until now, and I gave him a suggestion. I said, you might be able to take your boring technology, because he's putting in the tunnels
Hmm.
between LA and Vegas underground.
Right.
You might be able to take that boring technology, repurpose it, and mine these stratified mineral layers that go 8 to 10 kilometers below my feet right here. And this thing extends from Northern California to northern Washington and inland too. This is a massive piece of geology. And it's fully loaded with extremely valuable minerals. What's rests below my feet could easily pay off our national debt times 10 based on today's prices. Because when you suddenly have a big supply, prices drop. I know that. I'm talking
Invite
about
me up
today's.
there to help. I'll help.
So that's why I think they were flying on it. But you know what happened during that flight? And again, I'm going to speculate, but the timing works here. They discovered those hydrothermal vents off the coast of Washington State. Now that's important and I think they're like just several miles off the coast. Because guess what that means? Tsunami.
Hmm.
It turns out Chief Seattle was right. The Native Americans would never build there. You know why? Because they had ancient stories of that place getting flooded out of the blue from time to time, and they had a spirit name for it, and they wouldn't live there. They may have hunted there and stuff, but nope. Chief Seattle didn't live there. That's how it got its name, and now we know why. But the beauty is now that NASA's, and there's been more flights since. Now that they've discovered all this, they have been doing. These are just the ones I've been seeing. At least 10, and there's been other ones happening up
Wow.
north of us.
So they're
They're
definitely looking.
they're concerned about this threat they never knew about. Now think of the beauty of that. My journey may have ended up in saving untold lives.
It's
Now
wild.
you know why I get
It's
emotional.
yeah,
Makes sense
yep,
now, right?
it does.
It's fucking beautiful.
Well, Kevin, there's so much there's a lot of things that you're connected with, and I think again a lot of it comes right back to that 2004 because it seems like everything that has occurred has been a result of, or at least an enlightenment, or at least a um, consciousness from that incident. And it seems as if everything that you've had moving forward from that has been for a reason. And
Too many serendipities, man.
it's
Even
it
now,
is it's
even now, it's weird. Some of the things that happen in this house, man. I'll be working outside, walking the door, or going to get a screwdriver or whatever, and I look at the digital clock at 11:11. This happens all day, every day. Or I'll walk by, it's 1, 2, 3, or 3, 4, 5. It's like matronic numbers, but they repeat all day, every day. It happens. My wife,
it's odd.
yeah, everyone that's here sees them. It's weird, and I don't plan to go buy the stove and digital clock right in that moment, but I seem to. There's ones that show up
It's
more
very
than
odd.
like 727 shows up a lot for some reason. You know, 11:11 shows up a
When
lot for some reason. Huh? 1, 2,
when
3, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5 show up a lot.
when so do you still speak with
And by the way,
Lou at all?
backwards numbers very seldom show up. Like 3, 2, 1, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3. That very seldom happens, but it does. And you know what I do when that happens? I rethink what I'm about to do.
Yeah, don't
Yeah,
do it.
yeah. Well, at least maybe I reconsider it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure
Do you
why.
still speak with Lou at all or no?
No, would be the short answer. Although I could, I'm sure if I reached out to him, he would ask, what's going on, what's up. At this moment, I just don't
I'm
have a
just
real reason. And
I'm
I
just
love
curious,
I love the guy. Don't get me wrong, him and Tom both, and
yeah,
I owe them both a lot. But essentially, I don't want to bug him. That's what it is. I respect
sure.
him enough not to kind of leave him alone. That's what it
I'm
is.
just curious if part of his revelation for 2024 is part of your journey. Because he's basically saying what he believes is early to spring 2024, things are going to change drastically. Um, I don't have a definitive answer as to what that is. I mean, I'm out there looking to try and get more answers into that, and maybe that's just part of his journey that he needs to tell. But I'm curious because you were a part of that journey. Um, is there something along those lines that you feel may be occurring? Maybe chatter between, some of the people that you talk to. Is there something that is sort of a revelation that's going to be occurring? I don't really have more than that, other than a lot of speculation and thought behind the scenes here. But
Not to my knowledge.
I don't have a
I,
definitive answer.
I don't even have
Yeah.
any speculation about it.
Yeah, I don't either. It's tough. It's a tough thing. I'm not
In fact,
positive
I was
what
going to ask you
it
to
means.
send me some links so I could track that down for myself. I wasn't aware.
Yeah, I will.
I
So
wasn't
one of
aware.
them was his Twitter.
Okay, I
One of
wasn't
them
aware.
is his Twitter that he made it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
wasn't
So
aware.
I'll send you that.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll send it to you. So anyway, I think our time is up. I appreciate everything, and I want to obviously keep in touch with you. We have a back channel that we can talk whenever we want to.
absolutely. So,
I know that you have an upcoming event. You want to talk about that at all?
yeah,
I think it's an online event.
it's still, and all the details aren't sitting in front of me, but it's on my Facebook page. It's a
Yep, I can
international
link it.
event, and there's some big names, and I was lucky enough to get invited. And my point right now is I hope I don't screw it up.
You'll be fine.